Things haven't been so rosy for Capcom recently. They had, I would say, a golden period. All the Resident Evil games, Monster Hunter being extremely successful, even Devil May Cry came back years ago. They had quite a good run, but recently they've been squandering everything. You had the drama with Dragon's Dogma 2. And now we have this localization nonsense. And this was from a few days ago. Some of you might be aware of it. I'll give a quick recap. But I want to focus in more on the reaction to this, because while most people read over this, heard about how Capcom, when they localize their Japanese games, bringing them over to the West, they're not just turning Japanese words into English words, so people like me in the West can understand them. They're changing the very context and the meaning of what's going on in the game, purposefully to push Western agendas, worldviews, political agendas of one side of the aisle down people's throats. And this isn't just a rumor people have conjured up. This is Capcom themselves telling people that. So I do want to focus on people's reactions to it, but just to recap, this starts off all fine, all innocent with what is localization. And they essentially explain that when you translate, say, a Japanese game into English, you can't just run it through Google Translate and call it a day. Sometimes these languages, they don't work the same way. You can't just convert every Japanese word into an English word and it all makes sense. There is often more work that has to be done. That by itself, that isn't malicious. That is fine. It's the reason translators do exist. However, where things do get nefarious is as we go through cultural sensitivity in characters. Character design and development must be culturally sensitive. Maybe in the year 1980, I could have just taken this and gone fine, but I know what that means in the year 2024. Culturally sensitive is going to mean that if there's a character in the Japanese version of the game who says something that could be deemed offensive by weirdos in America, then that has to go, meaning we, as gamers, as English-speaking gamers, we lose out on the content that the developers originally intended. And this awful team, the Capcom Localization team, they're doing all of this stuff. Inclusive language and representation. They've even got the rainbow flag or whatever symbol there. Localization efforts extend to promoting inclusivity through language and representation. This involves adapting not only the linguistic aspects, but also addressing gender-specific language, cultural norms, and diverse perspectives. All that really says to me is the localization team is totally compromised. I would imagine, sadly, that it isn't people in the Japanese office translating it into English, people who speak both Japanese and English over there. It's probably been outsourced to people, say, in America, perhaps, who are doing it. And if that is the case, as we've seen a lot lately, if you follow any of the other language translation drama, this has happened with many animes, for instance, where some of them, the people doing the translating, they've been very outspoken, admitting, bragging about the fact that they totally change plot lines, character motivations, to educate people and use it as a chance to push LGBT stuff down people's throats and take anything out. Like a funny joke that maybe one weirdo gets offended by, that has to go. We lose out on the content because of these insane people. Now, fortunately, sanity has prevailed, and most people's reaction to this is awful, just stop. Just translate it as originally intended, no agendas. We understand that you can't just do a one-for-one translation again in Google with a machine and it's going to make it perfect. There does, at least right now, maybe AI will get there one day, but for right now, you need impartial translators who just have one goal: to take what's there in Japanese and to do their best to convert that into English. And again, it's not going to be a one-for-one. It'll take some work. It won't be an exact replica, but you need to get it as close as possible. Right now, the people doing the translation, they do not have that goal. All they care about is using their position for what I'd say is evil means in some cases. They want to push propaganda down people's throats and use their position for that. Sadly, not enough people are checking their work and making sure, like, are you doing a good job here? Are you just doing the translation as you're meant to? No one seems to be doing that. Sadly, they're getting away with it. They're like an anti-Scooby-Doo villain. But this needs to be looked at because eventually, if AI does get there and people can do their own translations, people are going to find out very quickly that Capcom and these other companies are putting their name on something that is basically propaganda. You're letting one translator rewrite your game, push in this political messaging, LGBT stuff where it doesn't belong, because the translator's just working on their own and they've got their own agenda. So again, most people are fairly upset about this, and understandably so. We just want the Japanese version of the game in English. That is it. And if we go to the old reset era, the mental asylum, someone's made a thread here talking about it, and they brought up a few posts here. We'll go into some of them, but an example is, thanks for the confirmation that localization is just imposing Western values onto Japanese media. Not that we needed it, because it's been obvious for decades. So this person, this poster, is trying to ridicule someone like this, who brings up a pretty valid point. Dissolve this branch of the company immediately. Well, at the very least, it needs to be reviewed, as do most translation departments, because again, a lot of these translators have come out and they've demeaned basically all of their customers and said, I hate you, so I change the translation accordingly to spite you and to push a worldview down your throats. And if you don't like it, you're just a bad person. If you want the Japanese version in English, that makes you evil, because that's not the best opportunity we've got here. We've got a chance to re-educate children and push a message. Let's do that instead. Let's not just give you the honest product as we're meant to. Many of them are doing it, so the translation entities do need to be reviewed. I will say this though, this comment, can't AI just do this cheaply and easily instead? Now, a lot of the people who are pro-Capcom in this case, they love the fact that these woke agendas are being pushed into these games, and that's all they care about. They couldn't give a toss that the integrity of the game is undermined because we're not getting the developer's vision. We're getting someone else, a weird translator with pink hair, and they've changed their gender last week. They've decided to give us their version. And these oddballs on Reset Era, they don't care about that. They just like that their political agenda's being pushed. It's convenient for them. They've latched onto this one. Can't AI just do this cheaply and easily? I'm seeing this all around, that they're convinced that literally everyone is saying just replace all localizers with robots, essentially. Now, I will say this. If the options are, we get these nefarious translators, political people, that's all they care about. If it's either them or robots, I will take the robots any day. Even if it's a slightly butchered translation that doesn't read that well, I'd still prefer that over being lectured to and basically lied to, because I'm not getting the game that I really paid for. But I personally don't think that's the best option. I would prefer that you just bring on impartial people whose only goal is to translate the game. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there willing to do a great job. The problem is, these translators the companies have now, a lot of them have dug their heels in. They've probably been there for years. No one's held them accountable. They've got comfortable. They have no accountability to their job. They can just do a terrible job, change everything, make it political. No one's calling them out and reviewing them, it seems like, which is just sad. So just get them out, clear out the rot, and get some good people in there who want to do a good job. I'd say that is the best way forward, because I don't think that a machine right now will capture the nuances of a translation when you bring it over. If you've spoken to anyone whose second language is English, you've probably seen that, where people don't quite get slang and different things like that. It's very common. It would be the same for me if I went to Japan. I tried to speak Japanese, I'd miss everything. They'd probably be making fun of me and I wouldn't understand it. I tried to do French in school. I wasn't very good at it. So I don't think the machines are ready for it. Get good people. But again, not everyone is saying this. It's not as if everyone is saying replace them all with machines and that's the best possible option. People are just straw manning that to suit their own agenda. These people who are defending Capcom. Now we can see, for instance, someone comments and says, if I was a game dev, I'd be happy these scumbags didn't buy my game, even if it meant a few less dollars for the team. Yeah, I'm sure the team at Capcom just love that. They love the sound of, oh, just piss off 50+% of the customer base. We don't want any of your money. I'll tell you this, Capcom don't give a toss about you. All they care about is money, and unfortunately they're out of touch, and they've been convinced by a Western media, which is a lot louder than the people they represent, let's say. Most people do not want this. They just want the product as is. They want the Japanese version translated to English, not the Western political version. And Capcom do not care. They just want money. And we spend more money. The people who are annoyed about this, they're often a bit older and they've got the income to buy these games. It's people like yourself who don't. You scream from the heavens, but it's entirely politically motivated agendas. You want to push your worldview. You don't care about video games. You weren't buying this anyway. You'll talk about it and then you'll disappear even if they do what you want. You're a parasite. And we've got this one, which I've seen being brought up a few times, where someone does mention addressing gender-specific language. That was in that original Capcom post about, oh, how we're going to change our games, make them all sensitive, everything like that. And an example given is in the Japanese version. There's a line of dialogue between two people, a boy and a girl, and the girl says, just stand tall, you're a boy, aren't you? And then in English, that was changed, and she says, just take a few deep breaths. Now, I don't speak Japanese, so I don't know if this is entirely accurate, but assuming that it is, this is not the same. It's not a one-for-one translation, at least in terms of intent. I know it can't be identical, but it really seems malicious. It seems like you took something that an insane person would see as an evil gender stereotype. Oh my god, you're suggesting that a boy might stand up straight and maybe look assertive. Oh my goodness, that's toxic masculinity. So it was changed, a few deep breaths. This would just be the start of it, because, again, the straw man will be, oh, you're a snowflake getting upset about this one line of dialogue. You know that that is one out of probably hundreds of thousands of lines that have been changed drastically to push a particular worldview in this particular game. It's only going to keep going. We've got a genuine example of where this has been used in a bad way, and people will just try and dismiss it, and unless you come up with a million examples, apparently it's not bad. We're providing evidence of this being done maliciously. And this person says, imagine getting upset over a line that has the exact same meaning. It doesn't. The line has been massively changed here. Even if you think it's the same, the intent is really what matters. And this translator is showing that in any instance where you suggest that men are men or girls are girls, the translator is going to put pen to paper and basically write their own fanfiction. I want the game from the Capcom team. I don't want the Twitter Weirdos version of the game, their own weird imagination and putting that into the game. That is awful. That is not what I want. It's not what I paid for. People should be able to get refunds if they can show it's been changed so far from what it originally was. Maybe there's some nuance there, but I honestly think you should be owed a refund, because that's not the Capcom game at this point. That's kind of weird. Maybe that's a different conversation, but it's something to think about. And the full line from this crazy person, imagine getting upset over a line just without the complete unnecessary gender connotation. So again, showing their true colors. They don't care about the integrity of the video game. They're just happy that it's lining up with their worldview. Imagine if it was the opposite. Imagine if you had an LGBT character and the Japanese studio put it in there, and then the Western translation company said, no, we're not having this, we're going to change it, they're going to be a straight person, and they're just going to have regular dialogue. This person, everyone on this website, they would lose their minds and you would never see more outrage from them. And then all of a sudden it's all about integrity of translation, we have to stop this. But because it doesn't affect them politically, they think, oh, this is going to educate kids and they're going to think like us, they're going to vote like us, it's all okay. They'll push the right message. Suddenly they couldn't give a toss about integrity in translation. That's just what these people do. They're insane. This one as well, constantly these straw man. So someone says, I will never buy another Capcom game as long as this woke mission statement is how Capcom does business. It's a shame. OG Mega Man is one of my all-time favorites. And then this person supposedly hitting him with a gotcha says this man hates localization, calls him Mega Man. And the context there is that I believe in Japan, if you did a one-to-one translation, then Mega Man would actually be called Rockman in the West. I'm not sure if that's still how it is, but I believe when it originally came out, it was changed in the West from Rockman to Mega Man. Now, why was that done? I've seen a few theories thrown around. One of them is that Rockman, it was meant to be something to do with like rock and roll music, and then it kind of sounded weird, so they just went for Mega Man. The other one was maybe it was a slight bit of censorship in that Rockman was slang or something for using cocaine. It had some connotation there. So it was changed for one of those reasons. Neither of those reasons are what we're talking about today, which is the dialogue, characters, context in the game is all changed around to push Western political agendas. So this idiot is basically trying to water this whole argument down to, oh, anyone who's upset, they hate localization. They think that when you convert Japanese to English, every single word's going to be changed one at a time, it's going to be an exact replica. Not many people who genuinely understand the issue are saying that. We are talking about pushing this political messaging that's ridiculous. But these people will constantly do that because they don't have a real argument against it. They know deep down that what's going on is malicious, but they don't really want to call it out or argue against it because they like it. They love that this is happening because they sit on that side of the aisle. Again, as soon as things go the other way and it affects them negatively, they will melt down about it. But for now, they're just going to straw man and argue against what's not actually happening. Most people who get it, they understand that localization takes work. You do have to look at the context and you've got to look at the language, convert that properly into English. That is all fine, but the people doing it right now, they are evil. They need to be kicked to the curb. And we'll end with this one. Someone has a sook and says, so after Sweet Baby, they're just going to go after everyone, aren't they? Of course. Well, anyone like this, Sweet Baby, it's one of the many agendas that are going on at the moment, whether it's Western games and you're pushing crap down people's throats there, or you've got these localization people who are like double agents. They're there, they're meant to be doing a specific job, but they're doing it nefariously to, again, push messages down people's throats, try and re-educate children, bring them into the fold. It's all pretty scary stuff. It's great that attention is being put on this. Capcom, they're getting more negative feedback. First the Dragon's Dogma stuff, now this, they may have to have a good hard look at themselves, because we've seen with Stellar Blade, none of this crap's necessary. I think it had maybe the most downloads of any demo on the PS5, at least I think compared to Final Fantasy Rebirth. It like doubled those numbers despite being a brand new IP. It's probably going to do very well. They don't have any of this crap, it looks like, in their employee handbook, whatever you want to call it. They just want to deliver a good product. You should do that as well. You used to be good at it. Stop mucking everything up. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.